All right, good evening, everyone, and welcome to Esoteric Lighthouse, episode 17, the Rite of Circumambulation. We got a few subtopics under this spiritual understanding of circumambulation, circumambulation in the Eastern traditions, circumambulation in the Middle East, the spiral universe, and the taurus factor. Again, welcome to Esoteric Lighthouse. We are a group of free and accepted Masons from regular and recognized Masonic Grand Lodges focused on the esoteric, occult, and philosophical lessons found in Freemasonry. This being a public forum, our views and interpretations are not legal or official statements or opinions of any Grand Lodges, Masonic bodies we hold memberships with. All the opinions, thoughts, and interpretations are solely that of the panelists. All right, jumping right in, the rite of circumambulation. Circumambulation means to walk around some central point or object. In Masonry, this act is performed in a clockwise manner patterned after the movement of the sun and is seen from the earth moving from east to west by way of south. The candidate's journey around the altar also enables the brethren to observe that he is properly prepared. Circumambulation is an ancient practice found all over the world. Much of the same is the idea of the labyrinth. It portrays the path of initiation as that of a journey. In another sense, it symbolically aligns one with the proper relationship with the order of the universe. There are many references to the circuitous routes in Psalms 26:6 and Job 22:14. And one other member may have some action, and that is the other story that talks about circumambulation is at Jericho, according to the Encyclopedia of Freemasonry. Spiritual understanding of circumambulation. During the circumambulation, those who are circumambulating visualize themselves moving upwards as though climbing a spiral staircase. As they do this, a sphere of golden white light comes into being, and above the altar, the hidden sun. This invocation to the Lord of the universe is directed towards this, the science of light. Circumambulation of the altar is regarded as an act of devotion. The very word path signifies from where the feet treads. It is most important to know that walking is the physical exercise and the supernal physical endeavor, making both movement and rest the most fundamental things in life. Circumambulating the lodge represents a pilgrimage of the spirit, just as circumambulating of the Kaaba in Mecca is performed. In Sufism, it is stressed that our physical body is the temple of God, and circumambulation of the path represents the spiritual walk required for esoteric training and development, the science of light. You cannot believe it unless you experience that. Just by whirling, you can know yourself. No austerity is needed, no self-torture is needed, but just an experience of your innermost being, and you are transported into another plane of existence, from the mortal to the immortal. The darkness disappears and there is just eternal light. It is not that the dervish dances, God keeps dancing in him, Osho. Circumambulation in the Eastern traditions, Dhyana and the Eightfold Path, cosmic consciousness, endless spherical expansion of the blissful awareness, perception of God and the cosmic Om, reverberating throughout the whole of the universe. God talks with Arjuna, the Bhagavad Gita. In Buddhism, circumambulating is the process where one receives perfect power and perseverance without being lazy. Without idleness, the mind develops quickly. It is the ultimate way of purification from our lower nature. Walking meditation is a dynamic way of encouraging mindfulness. One circumambulates to clear the consciousness of the ego. This form of letting go helps us to solve life's nuances by physiologically circling the self through the deep process of individualization, solving the problem by outgrowing it in the mind instead of using fruitless, aggressive tactics to answer. Circumambulation with meditation also helps one to visualize that sometimes that our problems arise to help find a viable solution, the science of light. Circumambulation in the Middle East. Circumambulation of the Kaaba or the cube at Mecca is a symbolic ritual related to the concept of squaring the circle, according to Robert Lawyer in his book, Sacred Geometry, Philosophy and Practice. Circumambulations around the sacred objects are well known in the Muslim world, not just the Kaaba, but as well as the saints' shrines as well. The same applies to the Christian realm. Sometimes the references mention circumambulation, specifically circumambulation around sacred trees, such as in India and also in Poland. The purpose of the ancient and widespread rite of circumambulating a sacred object, tomb, or building is for those encircling to the object to acquire of the barakai, I may be butchering that word, or the healing powers of the shrine, or the circumambulating ritual dances around sacred trees in Lebanon to ensure good harvests. The practice is designated to secure the maximum amount of blessing from the sacred object in question by allowing the sides of it to act on the worshiper. So basically what that's saying, you're trying to cover your whole self by going around the object. So you're turning and you're going around the object and you're trying to get all of that energy from the object from all sides onto you and inside your body, inside your being rather. The practice of circumambulating a tree still exists today as found in present studies, but only to cure ill domestic animals. This form exists among the Bedouin in the Negev and is also exclusively found in the Druze sector. Circumambulating in the Middle East continued. Everything in this creation is spinning counterclockwise. Our atoms and our electrons that spin around the nucleus to the earth, which spins around itself and moves counterclockwise around the sun. As everything is spinning in love of the divine and submission to the divine powers that powering all of creation. Sufi masters were teaching us to mimic that reality. Therefore, in the world, Sufi whirling, the body represents the earth and the heart represents the sun. As the earth rotates around the sun, the divine is showing you that when you are moving towards that process of enlightenment. The Naqshbandi secrets. In contemporary art, Sufi themes and imagery continue to inspire artists, including Parviz Tanali, who explores the suppression of the ego in his sculpture, Poet Turning into Heech. In his works, Endless Prayers 28, he uses abstract spirals from the Rumi's poetry text to reference the spinning circumambulations of the samba, which is an ecstatic dance of the dervishes. The spiral universe. Modern science has proved that many things we've confirmed importance of the tawaf according to the Kaaba anti-clockwise. The blood inside the human body begins circulation anti-clockwise. The electrons of an atom revolve around its nucleus in the same manner of making tawaf in anti-clockwise direction. Considering the globe as a whole, you will notice that the moon revolves around the earth anti-clockwise. The earth rotates around its own axis anti-clockwise direction. The earth revolves around the sun in an anti-clockwise direction. The planets of the solar system revolve around the sun in an anti-clockwise direction. And the sun, along with it, the solar system orbit around the galaxy in an anti-clockwise direction. All galaxies orbit in space in an anti-clockwise direction. What that means is the planets, we say that the Earth goes from east to west as it's rotating around the sun. That is true. However, we're talking about the rotation of the planets, not their actual rotation. Their planets are actually spinning one way, but moving another way, as does our galaxy, as does the solar system. They're spinning one direction, but that direction is actually taking momentum and going in another direction. And I don't want to go too far down a rabbit hole or a tangent on this, but when you look at everything in the expanding universe, you have to go in an anti-clockwise formation. If not, you would spiral towards the center. Instead of expansion, it would be a contraction. So kind of going into the stism. But that contraction is still going into the reverse direction at this moment in time. The torus vector. In geometry, the torus, which is typically shaped like a donut, on the surface of revolution, generates the revolving in a circular three-dimensional space about an axis that is coplanar with the circle. If the axis of revolution does not touch the circle, the surface ring shape, and all is called the torus revolution. If the axis revolution is tangent in the circle, the surface is a horn torus. If the axis of revolution passes twice through the circle, the surface is a spindle torus. If the axis of revolution passes through the center of the circle, the surface is degenerate torus and the double covered sphere. If the revolved curve is not a circle, the surface is related to a shape of a toroid. Whereas the vector equilibrium represents the ultimate stillness of energy, the torus shows us how energy moves in its most balanced dynamic flow process. The important thing to understand about the torus is that it represents a process, not just a particular form. A torus consists of a central axis with a vortex at both ends and surrounding coherent field. Energy flows in one vortex through the central axis, out another vortex, and then wraps around itself to return to the first incoming vortex. The simplest description of its overall form is that of a donut, smoke ring, apple, or an orange, which are both torus forms, or more overtly spherical. Plants and trees also display the same energy flow process, yet exhibit a wide variety of shapes and sizes. Hurricanes, tornadoes, magnetic fields around the planet and the stars, and all the galaxies themselves have a toroidal energy system. All right, this concludes the presentation portion. And now let's open it up for any discussion, comments. Evening, brothers.
Good evening. I was waiting for Brother Barrett to jump on that.
Hey, I'm trying to get I was trying to get my thing off mute. My apologies. So one, my biggest thing, this ideology leads into my new favorite Masonic symbol, which is a point within a circle. I think this is just such a diverse like symbol and ideology that I think that every Mason and people should know in general. Now, the question that I have that I'm just going to pose a little bit more into it is like going back into like the science of it that you spoke about earlier, like within the body. Do you feel that like with like the gravitational pull and everything else that's going on, do you feel like that has any kind of effect? Like that's part of the grand architect's like design of having us have this like circumambulation go around throughout like in our body. Like I feel like all of it's connected, but like I'm saying, is that's just my assumption. You know what I mean? I don't have any science or anything to back up behind that. So I'm just curious on your thoughts on that. That's the first thing I thought about.
Well, if you look at the whole creative process, the whole creative process is based on the law of three: creation, preservation, and destruction. It's that same thing: proton, neutron, and electron, positive, negative, and the symbiosis. So when you look at it, everything is in that centrifugal motion. It's spinning one direction or it's spinning another direction. Same thing with the torus vector. The torus vector is actually spinning and folding in on itself. It spirals around, and the spirals never end up in the same place. So when it's so many different ways you take circumambulation along with the torus vector and vector equilibriums, things like that, space-time, how all this stuff rotates in centrifugal force and gravity motion. I mean, certain speeds, certain densities, all these things, they equate to one thing, and that's life. That's energy and motion. Although some things are stagnant or look stagnant, because if you look at a torus vector, in reality, it does not look like it's moving on the surface. It looks stagnant, but in reality, it's folding in. Same thing with our energy and our DNA. DNA spirals are the exact same thing. It's that same spiraling of energy. So if you cut open the apple, you cut open the orange, it has that same spiral that the earth has as well. You know, our energy, plate tectonics, the plates are shifting and all of that stuff is the same torus rotation, or it's the earth circumambulating on itself and then turning into a torus as it spins around one way and it spins around another way. All we're doing is basically we're walking tornadoes and hurricanes. To sum it all up, the energy inside of us, the energy inside the universe, energy inside of everything is walking hurricanes at different speeds, different paces, and different vibrations.
Now, maybe I'm going to something different. When you talk about the torus and the vector, I was reading in that book that House had me start, that had me going down this crazy wormhole, a beginner's guide to constructing a universe. And it spoke about having two triangles pointing in opposite directions. And when they spin very fast, it ends up showing and making that same kind of like a vector. And then I think that went back to something we talked about in another group meet. I can't think of the name of the terminology for it. When
it's called a Merkaba.
Bam, there it is. It's all the same.
Yeah, it's all the same. It's called a Merkaba. Merkaba field, what it does, it's spinning two different directions. And what it does is still creates that torus energy of spinning and spiraling, coming out of one end and folding back into itself. So essentially, the Merkaba is the same thing as the chariot of Ezekiel, the wheel within the wheels. If you notice, they're wheels within the wheels spiraling around each other. Then you tie in the four beasts, and you see, we're jumping into other houses. As soon as you start talking about the Merkaba, you start jumping into other houses, and it's certain symbols that Royal Archmasons do that is based on that spiral rotation of those two triangles.
I'm gonna let Worsh get in, let him tackle a little bit more. You know, I'm gonna shut up for right now, but I'm geeked.
No need, my brother. I mean, it's essentially what Brother Williams was saying, that we're seeing physical manifestations of nature itself. I mean, I've always had the question of, we know that what was put in place in nature is going to, just continue to do that. It just makes you wonder if these things happen in us consciously or unconsciously, and how were those things put into motion within us? Because when we look at the Rite of Circumambulation, and I have to quote from this brother I know, he wrote this book a while ago, Brother Williams here. I mean, he basically echoes what JSM Ward said in the 1800s, where he was saying that essentially the circumambulation, is our spirit's journey through life and death. He basically, what Ward said, I could basically read both of them. The candidates going around the sun, that's symbolically the pathway of life. Whereas to go the reverse way, west, south, east, and north, is to go to Widdershins, which is the path the dead follow through the underworld. So once again, we see that intimate connection between life and death, depending on which way we move.
Right.
One being winding and the other one being unwinding, but a lot of times we look at death as the enemy, when it's actually basically kind of like, as we always say, learning how to die so that we could kind of move into the next phase of life. So
Right.
that's all I really had to add on, my brother.
Yeah. Just that right there, what you just said, going back from birth, life, and death again, you're representing those three. It's always three principal things. And those three principal things, they equate to a word or action. And it's an action word, but it also is a still word, which is Om.
Yeah.
AUM. And it's a symbol shaped like a three. Shiva wears it, and he has those three lines on his head with the red dot in the center, thinking about the sun. And, when you put all this stuff into context, as we continue to say, it's all centrifugal. It's all a process. There shouldn't be anything we should be afraid of. We should be prepared and know these things, because this is just nature. That's why I didn't go too heavy on it. I wanted to talk about the Druze a little bit more, but I didn't, because you're talking about Lebanon, tall cedars of Lebanon, the Druze, and their thing, when they go around the trees, you tie in it, the Druids, and then you start looking at Stonehenge and these things like these. Buddha sitting under a Bodhi tree with figs, then Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden under a tree, then tying fig leaves on themselves when they found out that they were naked. When you look at trees, you have to look at one thing and one thing only, and that's wisdom. And that's the wisdom of receiving. The trees represent wisdom and receiving. Again, that same energy of the Taurus, if you look at the root and the branches of the tree, one is reaching down, one is reaching up. They're reaching up, getting energy to feed each other. One gets the sun energy and the other one gets the earth energy. You have light and dark working together in synchronicity to bring the tree nutrients and life. So it's going up, out, and back down, still pulling that energy. In that same formation, as the roots come and they blossom up like this, and the tree canopies down like that. So again, like I said, it's light and dark working together in circumambulation inside of a tree.
Indeed, and just building upon that, as you said, bro, you have a situation where you have the xylem in the tree itself drawing the water, from the root system, going up through the trunk, right? And it comes back out through the leaves, through what, oh geez, I just had a mental block on that, because it's not respiration.
Not
But as we know that trees put oxygen out into the atmosphere, transpiration, that's what it is. So you'll have the oxygen coming out of the trees. Also, you have moisture, humidity, all those things coming out. And those things are heavier than, oxygen, of course, is going to rise, but everything else is a little bit heavier, and it'll come back down. So as, the brother saying, it goes up, comes out through the leaves, and that comes back down to the earth. You just have that cyclical motion constantly.
You know what else I found interesting? Studying preparing for this, studying the Islamic perspective of behind Sufism and the spiraling of the dervishes. It also it breaks down all four elements in their circumambulation because they're channeling the wind to produce. I was reading something with Rumi. It was talking about the fire transpiring. They look like flames from certain directions, and it's kind of still trying to understand it, but made a lot of sense because you saw all the elements in it when it combined under circumambulation.
It's interesting too. Even when we look at the elements itself, we say the air is the lightest portion of it, right? Then if you wanted to go in order, you're talking about kind of like fire, water, and then you come down to earth, and you can see how, if we're talking about levels of energy, how that goes from a higher frequency of vibration. And as those elements begin to slow down, they become coarser and they become solid, so I think it's kind of important to look at the elements in that fashion as well, which is kind of like what you're saying.
Right.
They're embodying those things.
Yeah.
But just as a side note, bro, I don't want to, I kind of see a connection to, remember I put something out there about the exoplanets. And how the exoplanets are not visible, right? And the way that they had detected them were through gravitational anomalies and light anomalies, because the way that they were able to see them were when the exoplanets were in front of a star and their effect on that star and the gravitational pull. So I thought that was kind of heavy that we've had these elements circulating, once again, circumambulating around the solar system, because the exoplanets, they call them that because a good number of them are outside of our solar system, right? So it's like they're actually circumambulating around our solar system, and they didn't know that they were even there until this guy had discovered them about 20 years ago.
Yeah,
kind of heavy.
And the other great thing when we're talking about, when I mentioned that all religions and most major factions are doing it, Christianity along with the Catholic Church, they do something with a thurible, and they go to Christian shrines and circumambulate. It actually started from a cult practice because we know that a lot of different factions or groups were compiled under Constantine at Constantinople to form what we know as the modern Bible via the Catholic Church. They also did it in Romania, and it's an Easter custom. Then the Coptic tradition has it, Islam and Tawaf. Am I saying that word right?
Yeah, Tawaf.
Tawaf for the Hajj and Umrah. Then the Sufi dervishes, also in Judaism, in a counterclockwise manner, in the direction of the Hakafat ritual during the festival of Sukkot. Sukkot, maybe Hinduism, devotional practice. Zen Buddhism is known as Jundo, also found in Sikhism and Baha'i, and then of course Freemasonry, according to, what is this, Tambu.
It's kind of interesting too, bro. Like the Baha'i temple is actually set up like a nine-gon, as they would call it, a nonagon. It has 9 sides to it. So
Nonagon. Now you're talking, you jumping into some Scottish Rite stuff there. Yeah.
I don't know, bro. I just sit over here, mind my business. a little too much.
All right.
I just laugh because everything that I see from here, it goes back to, and like I said, when I was reading that book, is like everything runs back to the monad. It's just a representation, and it's your goal to try to go back and basically get away from the illusion of division. Because like everybody can think and they see like, oh, this is something different than that. I just think it's just like, think about this: if you were to paint something or design like Past Master Williams, in all of your artwork, there's like this, there's similarities in all of it, even though it's different. There's similarities in like textures, color tones, or like techniques. I think when I look at all the stuff that has to do with circumambulation, it goes back to the grand architect of the universe, and that all of this is just his design or her design, whatever you want to call it, design for the monad. Like that's all I see the whole entire time. It's just like a representation of the monad. It's like, hey, we're all a part of this. We think we're separate, but now we're just like fingers on a hand. That's all it is. And these are little notes that are left around, kind of like the little Da Vinci Code show that everybody's watching and flipping out about. Here's little notes and stuff that the grand architect of the universe left to be like, here you go. I really like circles. You know what I mean? Like that's, I don't know. That's my layman terms of my appreciation of it, you know?
Essentially, what you just did, you actually did break down what I do. My pictures are all connected. What I've been doing for the last 3 years, they all relate to each other in some form or fashion. And sometimes you might have to just go to my Pinterest and look at them all at once. If you look at them, you'll see certain things are sticking out in certain ways because it's a picture inside of a picture type deal. And they say certain things, they have certain messages, and it's not for anybody right now. It's for people who can understand in the future.
I brought something up. I don't know if you brothers have seen the recent iteration of War of the Worlds. And so the current writers had a different spin on it. Initially, when these beings came to the planet, of course, their vision of these aliens were, what we think they are, looking like ET or something very strange. And it just so happened that they were humans, right, who had returned. And when they bring the whole story around, essentially what happened is, and it's kind of getting into some dark type stuff, but due to events in the past that led up to current events, these folks had ended up going to another planet, right? And what happened is there was a young man, and it's crazy. When I tell you about it, it's like when you start thinking about how it goes, you brothers don't understand it, but think about it like this, Mike. Let's say something happened today where a young boy and a young girl from two seemingly unconnected families end up on an alien vessel. The way that the aliens traveled was actually through time. So if they knew exactly where in time they wanted to go, their vehicles would just appear there, right? Showing us that they did not view time linearly, per se, but it was just either it's past, present, or future. Because of what happened today, where those kids ended up on that ship, there was an entirely different society that developed on this planet. And because of the nature of what happened, they were all literally brothers and sisters. They just kept marrying, right? It was all intermarriage. Through that, they developed a genetic defect, right? And as a result, their planet was dying. And what they saw is by going back in time, they would be able to go back and kind of like fix the defect that would end up leading to their extinction, So it was really interesting how all that played out, where essentially what ended up happening is the future came back to the past to fix their present. So,
Forgot I was muted. What you remind me of was this movie, one of my favorite kids movies, and finally got my daughter to watch it, by the way, was The Last Mimsy. The Last Mimsy is the same thing. It's basically how Alice in Wonderland, it's part of the Alice in Wonderland family and a theme about it. And again, they use sacred geometry, and they use one of the most oldest mandalas in history to be made in this movie as the symbol, and how they time travel from the future back to the past to fix their present. So basically, to sum it up, what The Last Mimsy was about was humanity had lost its compassion and its love for each other. Sound about right? We see that today.
Yep.
But in the future, it gets to the point where humanity is basically about to collapse and fall completely apart, and nothing is going to survive. So they send a bunny rabbit with like an Intel. You got an Intel processor. This is the future, and it's nanotechnology and Intel on this bunny that is able to travel back in the past, because you can't send matter back, or you can't send animate matter back, but you can send an inanimate matter, which is, silicon, microchips, something that does not have organic material like a human. So this bunny gets back, and it gets with this family. It brings these little trinket toys that spin around. And as it spins around, it creates an energy field, and this energy field creates the taurus again. And what it does is it opens up a pathway for things to travel from the past to the future, and so and so. So the Mimsy can get back from the past back to the future and to fix it. So the whole time these kids are looking to try to fix the future, they don't know what they're looking for. And what it ends up happening is this little girl, she cries, and one teardrop lands on a bunny rabbit, and that teardrop showed compassion and love, and that teardrop is what saved the future.
it's kind of heavy that we're talking about all these movies and series, and I know we all watch Loki as well, and that was essentially dealing with the same thing. So the relationship, I think, our way of looking at time has to be amended, because we're never really aware of the future, right? We could always remember our past, and our present is like fleeting, because think about it. Every time we say something, we're one more second into the future, you know what I mean?
Right.
But we can only remember what we did, a while ago.
But and here's the kicker on it. We have three things going on at one time. We have life, death, and rebirth at the same time, all at one time. Each second is a new life and a new death, but we're physically looking at it as the present, because what I just said 1 second ago is gone. It's dead. What I'm thinking of in the future hasn't even been said yet. So past, present, and future is going on, but I'm talking in the present tense. So we're walking symbiosis of life, death, and resurrection at one fleeting moment. It's a beautiful universe when you look at it, when you look at everything that's going on around us, but we have to take the time and smell the roses. I know a lot of us don't have the time to smell the roses, but 5 minutes a day meditating, it does a lot for you. 20 minutes reading a book does a lot for you, but we got people who don't want to pick up a book and don't want to meditate, but they do everything else to occupy their time. Got it. You get your priorities straight, but clear conscience, it does wonders for the mind and the body when you see everything in one.
Yes, sir.
So Loki, you mentioned Loki, it made me think about Fear Street as well. Fear Street, it had 3 different series. It was of a movie and it took place in 3 different times, but all 3 times were connected. And it was energy from the past that was driving through all the way to the future, but they could not figure out how to fix the current part of the future without understanding what happened in the past. So what that tells me, and what we're just discussing right now, is that anything that is affected in the future is affected by the past, and the past affects the future. So in order to fix now, we have to think about the future, and the future has to, you know what I'm saying? I'm getting a little too techy. My brain is all over the place.
No, but definitely understood, because, and a lot of the series that we've discussed kind of dealt with the same thing. Even when you look at Dark, that's why they were telling you when certain things were happening,
Right.
and when these other things were intended to happen again. And Adam was spending his time preparing for those seminal moments, as they would call them, those fixed moments in time that could not be changed. He was trying to change those things that should not be, tampered with.
Right.
So.
Yeah. Well, again, thank you for tuning in to Esoteric Lighthouse. Next month, we'll be switching it up a little bit. I'm not presenting. We got Brother Barrett, Worship Master Barrett. He's going to be presenting on some Masonic geometry.
Yes, sir.
All right. Good evening.